Reborn in 1987, on the day of my wedding to James Carter, I found myself marrying the most idle, blind drifter in his eyes, offering a generous dowry simply because, in my previous life, I had fulfilled my arranged marriage and became James Carter's wife. We spent more than 50 years together, and even when he fell gravely ill, I served him tea and water, cared for him devotedly. But in the end, James Carter left a will that gave everything he owned to Sarah Miller and her illegitimate child next door. In front of a room full of relatives, he spoke down to me, saying, "If I had known your family would collapse so soon, I never would have allowed myself to be forced by your father's power to leave Sarah Miller, who is carrying my child. You've taken her rightful place for too long. People have scorned you, called you the daughter of a corrupt official, said you were never worthy of being my wife, and yet you clung to that position shamelessly and maliciously. This money is repayment for what you owe Sarah and her son. Don't even dream of touching what rightfully belongs to them." He even refused to be buried beside me. Without my knowledge, he bought a burial plot and inscribed it with his and Sarah Miller's names. At his funeral, Sarah arrived publicly as his widow, with their illegitimate child at her side. While guests comforted her, my fury reached its peak. I suffered a cerebral hemorrhage and died on the spot. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day I married James Carter. His gaze sparkled with the clarity of rebirth. He shoved me dressed in a red bridal gown with red blossoms in my hair away, broke off the engagement publicly, and declared, "Get lost. You, the daughter of a corrupt official, dare to think you can marry me? Only a woman with a pure family name like Sarah Miller deserves to be my wife. I will be a leader someday." I neither cried nor begged. Instead, I turned calmly to the blind drifter who had silently loved me for years and whom everyone ridiculed, and asked if he would marry me and replace the groom. James Carter thought I was trying to provoke him, but not long after, he knelt before me with reddened eyes, pleading for forgiveness. "Even if I die and jump from here, I will never marry a woman like Emma Wilson," he swore. That voice, so familiar, broke through the haze of my return. I opened my eyes to see James Carter as a young man again, barely into his 20s. Around me, the air was festive and red silk adorned every wall of our old Western-style manor before it was seized. Red, sheep symbols were plastered everywhere. It hit me then I was truly reborn, right on the day of our wedding. I clenched my fists, the pain grounding me in the certainty that this wasn't a hallucination before death. My thoughts still swirled when the youthful James Carter approached me, his face no longer shy, but filled with naked contempt. He looked down at me, pushed me again, and snapped, "Get out. You, the daughter of a fallen politician, dream of marrying a man destined for greatness? Only a woman like Sarah Miller deserves to be my bride." I stumbled, nearly falling, but my brother caught me in time and glared at him. "James Carter, have you lost your mind? This is your wedding day. Are you seriously breaking it off now?" Startled Mrs. Carter James's mother quickly stepped in, smiling awkwardly. "Oh dear, this marriage was arranged by our elders. How could James go against it? He must have had too much to drink in excitement. Emma, darling, don't take it to heart. I've always thought of you as my own daughter." She grasped my hand with false warmth, but I instinctively recoiled. Nosh was a liar. In my past life, after my father's downfall, the entire Carter family's attitude changed overnight. The same people who once bragged about my family now acted as if I were a disgrace. The table no longer held dishes I liked. No new clothes came for me. To survive in that household, I humbled myself cooking, cleaning, massaging their backs, fetching their tea. I thought that besides my tainted family name, I had never wronged them. But betrayal was all I earned. James's mother, who always spoke sweetly before marriage, had secretly caused my infertility. The son James fathered with another woman lived right next door, and the whole Carter family knew it, yet they let me grovel, smile, and serve them like a maid. My pride was shattered. I despised myself for misjudging them and marrying into such a heartless family. I snatched my hand away and stepped back. "Auntie, since James has made his stance so clear, let's not force this marriage anymore." Panic swept Mrs. Carter's face. "Emma, don't misunderstand, James didn't mean it." But James, ever arrogant, scoffed. Mom, why are you wasting your breath on her? That old crook Robert Wilson never did anything good. His family's collapse is just a matter of time. Do they think they can tie me down with his daughter? If I marry her and the Wilsons fall, what happens to my future? I'm set to be a battalion commander, maybe, even higher. They're trying to use me. Shameless. His words made the guests visibly uncomfortable. They'd come to cozy up to my family, and now, hearing James call my father corrupt, many looked pale with uncertainty. James Carter's mother's eyes flickered, and she subtly took 2 steps back, distancing herself from me as if my presence might taint her. Oh, hasn't Emma always been a level-headed girl? There must be some misunderstanding, but my brother saw through her pretenses instantly, his face reddening with fury. Rubbish. James Carter, if the Carter family wants to back out of this engagement, do it with dignity. Don't sling mud at our family name on the wedding day. My sister has been nothing but kind to you. And now you turn your back on us. James Carter sneered, contempt unhidden. Ethan Wilson, if you care about your sister, perhaps you should start thinking about your own future. Hasn't the Army already forced you into early retirement? Don't act like you're still some decorated regiment commander. His words dripped with venom. In truth, my brother had been the youngest regiment commander in the service, a fact James Carter had always envied. Though James had served for nearly a decade, he had only made company commander with a great deal of help from my family. Back then, he would speak of Ethan with admiration, even awe. But after the fall, he would get drunk and mock me. Ethan Wilson's nothing without his father propping him up. Only then did I realize how deeply jealousy had taken root in his heart. My brother hadn't expected his private decision would be thrown in his face. His brows furrowed. I wasn't forced. I requested to demobilize. And that was the bitter truth. Had stepped down early just to give James Carter a chance to rise. Without Ethan's resignation, James never would have jumped 2 ranks in mere months. But James had no idea. He mistook Ethan's sacrifice for failure. Ha! A young regiment commander stepping down willingly? You must be mad. The guests murmured in agreement, their voices thick with suspicion. James might be right, one whispered. Ethan Wilson leaving the Army so early, maybe his superiors didn't like him. Is the Wilson family really falling? Panic bloomed like wildfire. Someone muttered something about an emergency at home and hurried away. One by one, they trickled out until a room once bursting with guests was nearly empty. My brother stood there fuming, helpless to stop the exodus, his fists clenched at his sides. If only father and mother hadn't gone to H Province for urgent business, he hissed. They'd never dare treat you this way. His words were daggers, aimed straight at James Carter. But the man himself was oblivious, too absorbed in his own inflated pride to notice. He strode towards me and said arrogantly, Emma Wilson, so you want to cancel the engagement? At least you're aware of your own limits. You're not worthy of me. Still, I know you're infatuated, so I might offer you a position Sarah Miller wouldn't mind if I kept you outside. I'll even give you the child you've always wanted. His tone was pure condescension, as if tossing me a crumb of compassion. I felt nothing but revulsion. Perhaps in my youth, in that first life, I had harbored a naive affection for him, but those tender feelings had long been smothered beneath the daily humiliations I suffered at the hands of the Carter family. For over 50 years, all I had wanted was a simple, peaceful family. But James Carter mistook my tolerance for devotion. Without another word, I grabbed a wooden stick nearby and shouted, Get out! Get out! He howled when I struck him and stumbled out, glaring at me as though he could flay me alive. Emma Wilson, you venomous witch. I was being generous. When your family crumbles, let's see who'll marry a curse like you. No sooner had the words left his lips than he was lifted off the ground like a sack of grain. His eyes bulged with shock. Michael Thompson? What are you doing here? The tall, stoic man beside me didn't answer. He simply threw James aside and said coolly, Where I am is none of your business. Didn't you hear her?
Get out.
James Carter, so used to being respected in his former life, was now reduced to a stammering coward. Rage twisted his features, but he didn't dare retaliate. Watching his humiliation, I couldn't help but laugh, just a quiet, amused breath. That laugh was all he needed. So that's it. This is your lover, isn't it? He must not know that your family is crumbling. Emma Wilson stopped dreaming. Without your family name, no man will want you. He spat his poison freely, pretending I was the unfaithful one when he was the one who had betrayed me first. Before I could speak, Michael Thompson slammed a fist into the wall behind James's head. Cracks spread like lightning. Say another word, he growled. James Carter's face turned ghostly pale. I looked up at Michael Thompson, a man who had quietly loved me for decades, never married, and had even helped clear my father's name in secret. It wasn't until my funeral in that other life that I learned the truth of his feelings. Swallowing my pride, I stepped forward and said clearly, Michael Thompson, I'm breaking off my engagement. Will you marry me? His body went rigid, and he slowly turned, eyes wide. What did you say? Marry me? But I don't even have a proper job. Won't your family look down on me, Emma Wilson? I'm afraid I'll bring you hardship. A warm swell bloomed in my chest. It's all right, Michael. I've brought plenty of dowry. I'll take care of you. I barely finished the sentence when James Carter turned red with anxiety. Emma Wilson, if you really plan to marry that blind drifter, think again. Sure, I can't make you my wife, but I still have a brilliant future ahead of me. What can Michael Thompson give you? James Carter scoffed. Michael clenched his fists, but then they fell limply to his sides. He didn't have a response yet, at least not one the world would accept. After all, in everyone's eyes, he was no match for James Carter. Both of his parents had died when he was a child. He grew up alone, struggling in the shadows of society. Even now, he didn't hold a proper position. Any family with a daughter would keep her far away from him. But none of that mattered to me. I slipped my arm through his and said calmly, let's go inside and finish our wedding. Michael was so overwhelmed with nerves that he could hardly move his limbs. He followed me like a stunned deer, leaving James Carter behind, stomping in impotent rage. Emma Wilson, he shouted after us. You're just trying to provoke me, to get my attention, aren't you? You'll regret this when I'm successful. I sneered silently. What a fool. Let him chase his delusions. I had been reborn. I wouldn't let history repeat itself. My father had been framed, and in my previous life, it was Michael Thompson who gave me the evidence right before he died. Inside the house, my brother was still fuming. Emma Wilson, that bastard James Carter dared treat you like that. I swear I'll make sure he never sees a promotion again. I nodded and gently pulled Michael forward, who stood frozen like a startled bird. Brother, let me introduce you. This is today's new groom. My brother's eyes narrowed as he studied Michael. I expected resistance, maybe even disappointment. But to my surprise, he merely looked him up and down and gave a short nod. All right then. This brother-in-law is already a step above that ungrateful scoundrel James Carter. At least he knows how to appreciate what he's been given. Give him some malt to see. This lad guarded you all through school. Our parents still talk about that sometimes. If it weren't for the engagement with James Carter back then, they would have brought Michael home for you long ago. I froze for a moment at his words, staring at Michael's blushing face. He didn't boast or take credit. He simply blinked and whispered, It's okay. I'm willing now. There was no hesitation in his voice, no fragile pride or wounded ego, only quiet sincerity. The anxiety that had gnawed at me since my rebirth began to fade. Maybe, just maybe, marrying a man like this was the right choice. But the outside world didn't think so. Rumors flared like wildfire. Did you hear? Emma Wilson married that loser Michael Thompson. Oh, the Wilson family must be doomed. Why else would they give their daughter to someone like him? James Carter must have been right. And now, word spread fast that he was preparing for a wedding of his own, this time with Miss Gu, the teacher's daughter. Clean family background, perfect for a man with rising political ambition. People whispered, if James Carter truly gets promoted and the Wilsons collapse again, will Emma Wilson regret letting go of such a promising son-in-law? The rumors reached even the TV station where I worked. Some came out of curiosity, some out of concern. I remembered them all. I smiled and told them, wait and see. As soon as those words left my lips, James Carter reappeared like a specter. Ha! You're all waiting to see her fall, aren't you? I can't believe you actually married someone like Michael Thompson. Emma Wilson, you really stooped low. I was worried you'd have nowhere to go once your family collapsed. He said it like he was some noble man full of righteousness. Sarah Miller, nestled in his arms with a shy smile, looked up at him with admiration. James Carter, you're so good. I'm lucky to have you. His chest puffed up with pride. Sarah Miller, don't sell yourself short. Compared to my ex-fiancé, you're 100 times better. I couldn't help but laugh. Pointing at her, I asked, 100 times better than me? In what way, exactly? James Carter assumed I was jealous. A smug grin appeared. Oh, you care, don't you? Emma Wilson, apart from your family background, you can't compete with Sarah Miller in any way. Laughter rippled through the crowd, but it wasn't the supportive kind. A few colleagues scoffed. Sarah Miller? She's just a temp worker. Emma's been on TV and has a degree. Right, another chimed in. I remember Sarah only finished technical school. Emma was university admitted. Hearing this, a shadow of hurt passed across Sarah's face. She leaned closer to James and murmured, James, they're right. I really can't compare to Emma Wilson. But James Carter didn't care. He glared at the ones who spoke up. Don't listen to them. They're jealous. You're about to become the wife of a battalion commander, maybe even a regimental commander. So, what if Emma Wilson has a good job? James Carter sneered. It's just because she has the Wilson family backing her. Without them, she's nothing. His words made Sarah Miller beam with satisfaction, but I simply watched them, unmoved. The truth was painfully ironic. James Carter was the one who cared most about my family background. He projected his own inadequacy onto others, convinced that everything I or my brother achieved was merely inherited, never earned. Unable to match us, he convinced himself we were frauds. How pitiful! Watching them cling to each other in their smug little bubble, I interrupted quietly. Oh, then she must be very happy. But does she know you once said you wanted to keep me as your mistress? Sarah Miller's smile froze mid-laugh. James Carter hadn't expected me to expose that, especially not in public. His face turned a shade darker as he slammed a thick red wedding invitation onto the table. Emma Wilson, don't flatter yourself. I only said that to humiliate you. In 2 days, Sarah and I are holding our wedding banquet. She kindly asked me to invite you. So, what are you trying to prove with this nonsense? Sarah, regaining her composure, leaned in with a sweet, syrupy smile. Sister Emma, I know you're upset that James chose me over you, but you can't go around trying to sabotage our relationship. People might think you still have feelings for him. Why don't you come to our wedding with your whole family? I'm sure it'll help you find closure. I saw right through her. Those words had been rehearsed. James Carter clearly wanted my downfall to be witnessed by all. But I smiled, lips curling ever so slightly. All right, I'll bring my family to attend. Even James Carter, who had always looked down on me, began to wonder if I'd lost my mind. Did I truly intend to show up at his and Sarah's wedding? Of course he didn't stop. Mayhay thought I'd come groveling, humiliated, begging him to take me back. When I returned home, I told my brother and Michael Thompson. They understood James's little game at once. He's nothing but a clown, my brother scoffed. None of us took it seriously until the day arrived. My brother drove us there in the family car, a sleek black vehicle that still outshined anything the Carters had ever owned. The Carter family had done their best to mimic the red, double happiness decorations they once plastered across our house, but their cramped space only made the setup look gaudy and chaotic. Still, James's mother was all smiles as she welcomed guests, acting as if nothing had changed. When she saw us, she barely lifted an eyelid, treating us like invisible dust. Her arrogance was blatant. She'd clearly believed James's lies and thought our family would never recover. We didn't react. We simply found seats and sat down quietly. Not long after, James Carter appeared with Sarah Miller on his arm. Their suits were fancier than before, obviously rented at a high price, and they wore them like crowns. Wow, James mocked. You really showed up. Drove your car here to flaunt it? Shameless. If I were you, I'd be hiding at home from embarrassment. Sarah gently rubbed her slightly swollen belly and cooed, James, don't say that. Guests are guests. Even if Mr. Ethan is a corrupt official and the Wilson family is about to be investigated, we should still be polite, right? Polite? James scoffed. Why would I be polite to the descendants of a criminal? Bad family, bad upbringing, bad work ethic. I don't need friends like them when I'm about to become a battalion commander. My brother and I didn't even look up. We simply kept eating. Over the years, our family had quietly funneled money and resources to the Carter family, none of which would ever be returned. So, at the very least, we were going to enjoy the meal. But in James's warped little mind, our silence was defeat. Ha! Go on, eat all you want. Won't be long before you won't get to enjoy food like this again. Your father's going to be arrested any day now. He gloated, fully intoxicated by his own delusions. Just then, a soldier in uniform appeared at the doorway. James Carter straightened up instantly. His mother gasped, and even Sarah's face lit up. Look, it's someone from the army. It must be news of your promotion. James Carter, you're incredible. Am I going to be the chief's wife now? And our baby'll be the son of a military leader. James Carter cleared his throat, trying to signal everyone to stay low-key, but he couldn't stop the smug smile tugging at his lips. Under the expectant gazes of the guests, he strode toward the young soldier in uniform, stretched out his hand, and said confidently, "Comrade, I'm James Carter. Has the document for my promotion arrived?" The young soldier blinked in confusion. James Carter? I'm sorry, who? I'm here to find our regiment commander, Commander Emma. The old general said he needs him to return to the army immediately once he's finished. James Carter's eyes bulged in disbelief. No, that's impossible. Robert Wilson was arrested. Ethan Wilson should have been dismissed from the army. The young soldier looked at him as if he'd lost his mind.
Who told you that?
Mister. Ethan is doing excellent work in H province. Even the top leaders are full of praise for him. Are you mad? The word struck James like lightning. Praise? He couldn't believe it. Wasn't Robert Wilson a corrupt official? Wasn't their entire family finished? Then where was his promotion letter? Panic distorted his face as he stammered senselessly, making the soldier step back warily. Spotting my brother calmly seated among the guests, the young soldier rushed over. Commander, how can you still be eating at a time like this? The old general couldn't sleep for 3 days after hearing you gave up your position to give someone else a chance. If you don't return soon, he'll be fuming. My brother wiped his mouth slowly, glanced toward James with a knowing smile, and replied, Understood. I'll return now. I missed some things before, and was nearly deceived by a fool. Don't worry, I won't step aside for undeserving men ever again. James Carter's face went pale. If he still couldn't comprehend the truth, he truly was a fool. The promotion he had once received in his previous life had been a favor granted by my brother. Around us, the guests previously silent and awkward began to murmur. Most of them had originally come to our wedding banquet. Thinking the Wilson family had fallen, they turned their coats, eager to flatter James Carter, the supposed future commander. Now they realized everything James had boasted was a lie. The Wilson family stood strong. Ethan Wilson remained a respected leader. And they had made the grave mistake of abandoning us. One by one, they returned, bowing and apologizing, eager to make amends. Captain Emma, this is all a misunderstanding. Yes, James Carter spoke nonsense, so we're deceived too. Please, for the sake of our past friendship, forgive us. I smiled politely. Uncles, you must be joking. Isn't it just a coincidence that all your families happen to be free today, and you came to the Carter wedding? What does it have to do with us? As I recall, there wasn't much friendship between us anyway. My brother stood beside me, nodding in firm agreement.
He knew these people well.
When rumors of our downfall spread, they were the first to flee. They weren't apologizing out of guilt, but out of fear that we might now retaliate. But what use was friendship with such spineless opportunists? Better to cut ties now. And so we did. Our cold indifference made their faces turn sour with humiliation. Unable to target us, they turned on James Carter instead.
Bah.
You brat. You made all this up just to get out of your engagement, didn't you? Didn't you hear the woman just now? She's pregnant. The doctor said it's at least a month along. A month ago, you were still engaged to Miss Emma? So, you seduced another woman while still betrothed? Shameless. The tide had turned. Guests who came to celebrate James Carter's rise now stayed only to mock him. The Carter house, once bustling, emptied quickly. In the end, only a few remained: me brother, myself, James Carter, his parents, and Sarah Miller. No one in the Carter family had expected things to unravel like this. Not only had our family not fallen, but the very position James thought was his had vanished. James's mother slapped her thigh in regret. What a sin, what a sin. James Carter, how could you be so blind? If Emma had married into this family, we'd still have a future. James Carter hadn't yet recovered from the blow. He glanced at us, a mix of shame and bitterness on his face. He wanted to beg for forgiveness, words hung on the edge of his tongue, but pride choked them back. He stiffened his neck, determined to make one last pathetic stand. Who says you need the Wilson family to succeed? Mother, don't you believe in your son? Even without them, I, James Carter, will be a battalion commander on my own. Emma Wilson married someone like Michael Thompson. How does she even compare to me? Sarah Miller, don't you agree? Sarah's face darkened. He repeated her name once, twice, until she finally forced a stiff reply. Yes. But we both saw those weren't her true feelings. She regretted it already, but James clung to her perfunctory answer like a drowning man. And so, the farce of a wedding banquet concluded with no guests left to witness it. My brother and I, having enjoyed a full meal and a full show, returned home early. Our parents had just returned from H Province and were waiting for us. But what I hadn't expected was the sight that greeted me: Michael Thompson sitting politely across from them like an obedient child, while my parents smiled as brightly as if they had just gained a son. I stared in confusion. What is going on? I whispered to my brother, Ethan, who looked just as baffled. It wasn't until much later that I learned Michael had spoken privately with my parents. He'd agreed to start learning business and help take over my grandfather's estate. James Carter always assumed our wealth came from corruption, had no idea that my mother was the sole daughter of the richest family in the province. Her dowry alone could support us for generations. And now, most of that dowry had already been passed on to me. What I hadn't expected was that my parents would think so highly of Michael Thompson that they entrusted him with the entirety of my grandfather's legacy. But then again, my parents weren't ordinary people. They had spent their lives surrounded by power and wealth. Of course, they had an eye for character. When James Carter and I were planning to get married, my parents never truly approved. They only said the Carters were too cunning and that I would inevitably suffer loss. As it turned out, they were right. But now, had they truly come to accept the man I had picked up halfway, me so-called cheap husband? It seemed ironic, but I had to admit me parents were brilliant judges of character. I had barely known Michael Thompson when we first married, yet after my grandfather handed him the reins of our family business, profits soared within a few short years. He was, in every sense, a business prodigy. The only reason his talents hadn't shown before was simply because he lacked the means and platform. Coincidentally, what the Wilson family had in abundance were exactly those missing conditions. 10 years flew by in a blink. With my father and brother's quiet support, Michael Thompson quickly became the youngest billionaire in City A. The same people who once looked down on him now raised their glasses in his honor. No one dared to question my parents' discernment anymore. When his interview aired on television, James Carter, long absent from our lives, finally reappeared. I was stunned when I saw him. He looked almost identical to the dying man from my previous life, yet we were all still young. How many failures had he endured to make him age so rapidly? I was still lost in thought when a warm coat, carrying the faint scent of soap, fell around my shoulders. I turned to see Michael Thompson beside me, his gaze sharp and protective as he stared down James Carter. But James didn't even acknowledge him. His eyes were locked on me, rimmed red. Then, with a sudden plop, he knelt down, sobbing. Emma Wilson, I was wrong, I was so wrong. Through his broken narrative, I pieced together his story over the past decade. After that ill-fated wedding banquet with Sarah Miller, he had envisioned replicating his former life's success by sheer will. But just one minor error, and the leader who'd once admired my father removed him without hesitation. Out of the army and out of favor, James was lost. Eventually, he found work hauling cargo at the docks, barely earning enough to buy malted milk for his child, let alone quality formula. He and Sarah argued constantly. As pressure mounted, He began to remember how I had treated him, placing him first, using my own resources to help him climb. Sarah, in contrast, gave nothing but complaints and demands. And then came the final blow. The son he had lovingly raised, believing him to be his own, wasn't his child at all. In both lives, he had been deceived,
Used.
forgotten, and finally broken. He looked at me with pleading eyes. Emma, I know you were reborn too. I can feel it. You still love me, don't you? Help me get back everything I lost. Before I could respond, Michael Thompson shoved him back down. Trying to steal my wife in front of me? What do you think I am? James had grown stronger from years of physical labor, but no matter how much he struggled, he couldn't break free from Michael's grip. In desperation, he spat, "You're just a pawn and I used you to get revenge on me. Don't flatter yourself." I rolled my eyes. You're the one flattering yourself. Whoever said he was a tool? Michael Thompson is my husband, the father of my child, my family. James's expression froze. Child, you have a child? I tilted my head. Of course. He's already 9 years old. Did you seriously think I'd waste a decade pining for you? Don't be ridiculous. Michael is now the richest man in the province. I'd have to be insane to give all that up for you. James Carter couldn't accept it. If I hadn't broken the engagement, I would have been the richest now. I could have had the Wilsons backing me. With that kind of support, I'd be better than him. That was the moment I realized some people are born arrogant. Even when they've lost everything, they still believe the world owes them. I turned away without another word. I didn't know what Michael did afterward, but James Carter never appeared again. Not until the news broke after a heated argument. He stabbed Sarah Miller and her illegitimate child. He was arrested and sentenced to several years. When he was finally released, not even the docs would take him back. But all of that was his own doing. What did it have to do with me? I had already left that life behind. I had begun anew.